Welcome to Unit 3 of OnlinePHPClass.com, and in this unit we're going to talk about variables and operators. So why? Why variables, why operators? Basically, programs operate off of variable content, and operators are used to assign and compare. So if you want some sort of dynamic nature to your code, you're going to want to include variables and operators. For anybody who's pretty much developed before, they understand why we want variables and why we need operators. And basically, that's what we're going to talk about in this section. So variables in PHP are represented by a $sign followed by a variable name. The variable name, however, must match specific standards. It must start with a letter or an underscore. It can be followed by any number of letters, numbers, or underscores. It is case sensitive. And the this variable is a special variable that cannot be assigned. It's used for object-oriented programming. So I want to just make another point to say that variables must start with a letter, okay, which is the first bullet here. To translate that a little bit differently, variables can't start with numbers or special symbols other than an underscore. And the majority of variables that start with underscores are actually globals or super globals that are PHP variables. So you probably don't want to use underscores as the first character of your variable after the $sign. And this is the only reserved variable that I know of. So variables are typed, not in the sense of typed as in keyboard, typed as in the sense of there's a specific data type that the variable represents. There, again, is no declaration needed for the variables, but sanitizing is important. That means if you're expecting an integer in that variable, the variable is typed, it can hold a string, and if you get it the type of the variable, you actually determine that it's a string. You have to figure out if it's an integer or not. Or you can use functions when we talk about sanitizing, how to sanitize for integers and strings and that kind of thing. A famous phrase from a course I took a long time ago in programming is double does dollars, and that basically means that your double quotes will interpret the $sign variables. So if you use single quotes, you will get a literal dollar in variable name. What's interesting to note, though, is if you put single quotes inside of double quotes and double quotes inside of single quotes. I will leave that to you for experimentation unless we happen to cover it in a later section. So single quotes won't evaluate the dollar. And there are constants. You can use the function define to define an actual constant. And in order to echo that, you echo it without the $sign. So here's a way to define pi out to a certain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 digits, or 9 decimal places, and then how to echo that constant. You can group, you can put variables next to strings, but you have to be careful. So this basically says sometimes we need to put a variable in the midst of a string. Say, for example, var equals test, and you want to echo var variable. So basically, you want it to print the output test variable as one word, okay? But if you actually put echo $var variable, PHP thinks you're talking about the variable called var variable, and not the variable var in the text variable. There are two ways to actually get around that. I'm wondering if I have both on the next slide. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, here you go. You could put, if you put a space, you would actually get a space in the result. And if you wanted it to be one word test variable, then you don't want to put a space. So one of the solutions is to use braces. You put the brace around the variable. And this way, PHP knows, oh, okay, well, out of that entire string, the section that is the variable name is the section in braces. You can also concatenate. Okay, so this actually is moving on to the concatenation section, but basically you can also concatenate. You could have $var dot variable as a separate string if you separated out the double quotes. So in other words, you could do something like this. Let's say I set the variable. Okay. One other way I can echo is I could echo var dot variable. Okay. Oops. Syntax error, unexpected dollar. Where's that? Ah, yes. There we go. Anytime you get a parse error, it just means that there's some sort of syntax related. Okay, so test variable. That's one way to do it. Okay. Echo, I'm going to say test. And what I'll do is I'll show you how var variable doesn't produce anything. Okay. Just says test and it's blank. Or I can put a break in here so make it easier. Okay. And I am pushing Control S in between to save it. It's a good question. I don't even know if it. I wonder if it needs the Control S. Yeah. No, it doesn't. It actually saves it when you hit the preview. Oh, that's nice. Okay, so test var variable, or I can do. Oops, that was the brace. The bracket. Oh, that's right. Okay. And var variable. Then if I hit internal, it shows up. Okay. So you can do it both ways. You can solve that issue. You can echo it with a concatenation, or you can put braces. Coincidentally, this is how you do dynamic variables. So let's say I create. I'll just show this to you. I'll probably explain it later though. So if I create a variable called test equals dynamic, just naming the test variable dynamic, and if I put a $sign here, what I'm actually saying is give me the variable. I'm sorry. Did I put in the wrong? Did I put in the wrong spot? No, that's right. So it's saying resolve a $sign var, and it gets test. Then it says resolve $sign test, and so it'll get dynamic. So you should actually get the phrase dynamic variable. There you go. So that's actually how you do dynamic variables. I just felt like showing that to you at this point. Anyway, so to concatenate, remember the period. Okay, that's the key there. Arrays. Like I said, we literally do jump pretty quickly, and I cover the key elements of each of the sections. So for arrays, you have the array function. You can use the array function to create the array, or you can just specify the array. So you have $R equals array, and PowerPoint decided to resolve my dash carrots to actual errors, which is okay, except I'll have to, like I can show you what that actually is doing. And then you have specifically referencing array index 5 equaling test value, or array index hot equaling chocolate. Okay, so remember the brackets. The brackets are what determine that it's an array, and you can also create multi-dimensional arrays. Okay, so if you have a horizontal and vertical element or whatever that you want to specify, you can do that with the brackets. You can create, I don't know if in the latest PHP if there's a limit to the number of actual dimensions you can have. You probably don't want to go beyond 3. But anyway, so what I'm referring to here is if I, can I copy this? No. That's going to move me back. Alright, so if I go to here, I can do something like $R equals array 5 equal greater than test hot equal greater than chocolate. And then if I echo R5, I'll echo break, and if I echo R hot. Whoops, I should probably put a break. You get test and you get chocolate. So what you're actually putting is a equal sign greater than. Okay? Alright, so here are some common array functions. You have array push, which pushes one or more elements onto the end of the array. So it's how you add an element to the end of an array. It returns an integer, and you pass it an array by reference, and a variable to add. So it literally adds it to the array. Mixed indicates a parameter that may accept multiple but not necessarily all types. Okay, just to give you an idea, just to let you know, sometimes in the syntax you'll see a keyword called mixed. Mixed is not a data type. It just basically states that the parameter may accept multiple types. Okay. You also have array pop, which is to pop the element off the end of the array, which returns a mixed. Because whatever the element is, it could be an integer, it could be a string, it could be another array. It could be a MySQL result. Anyway, so you have mixed array pop, and it takes an array by reference. Okay, note that the array pop function will reset the array pointer after use. Okay, so what that means is it sets the internal pointer of the array to its first element. If you pop an element off the end of the array, the actual pointer, internal pointer of the array goes back to the beginning. This is very important for when you're dealing with loops, okay? So here are some common array functions. You have unset, which unsets a given variable. So unset returns nothing, and you can pass it pretty much a list of mixed variable types. And unsetting an element clears the element. So if you unset array element 6, it goes away. And if you unset the array, you actually delete the array. So I'll give you a little demo here. If we unset array 5 and we echo I want to put that new. I'll just leave it as that. New array 5. Okay, it's empty. If I unset the array and I echo what do you think it's going to do? Okay, nothing. The array doesn't exist anymore. Okay. All right. So you have array count values, which lets you count all the values in the array. To give you a definition, as we get into keys and values, the index of the array is the key, and the result is the value. So if I go back to dev PHP, in this example, 5 is a key, test is a value, hot is a key, chocolate is a value. Okay, so when you're counting all of the values of an array, you're counting the values. Okay, it is really self-explanatory. That's how you do it, though. It returns an array, and the reason why is like what my note says. It returns an array using the values of the input array as keys and their frequency in input as values. Okay, so to just break that down, basically, let's say you want to count how many times chocolate appeared in the array. Okay. So I'm gonna, or how many times anything appeared in the array. Okay. So I'm going to not unset the array. I'm going to comment it. Okay. In fact, I'm going to comment. I can just get rid of all this. what I'm going to do then is I'm going to do array. So it needs an array. So counts of R, I'm just going to say, equals array count values R. Okay. Now, you got to be able to get the keys. Okay. So, I mean, you don't know what they are, but in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show. I'm pretty sure I cover this, but I'll show you one way to do it. Is you can, for test purposes, you can print the actual array using print underscore R. This gives you the array in a PHP format. Counts of R. And in order to do that, though, you really should put a pre-tag. An HTML pre-tag so that it properly formats it. And you'll see what I mean. Okay, then I do internal preview. So you can actually see what's in the array. So array count values gives you an array where the indexes are, where the keys are the actual values in the array, and the values are the actual count because we put chocolate in twice. Okay, that's how array count values works. Okay. Array key exists checks if the given key or index exists in the array. It returns a boolean, a true false, and you pass it a mixed element of key with the array to actually search. So think of it as needle haystack in that order. Okay, it checks if the given key is in the array. Checks if the needle is in the haystack. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Returns a boolean. Array underscore keys is a function that returns all the keys of an array. We use this sometimes when we do loops, although there's a neat little construct called for each that PHP uses, which makes it very easy to get keys and values for an array. So array underscore keys returns an array, and it takes an array for an input as well as a search value, and whether or not you're going strict. To be honest with you, you probably don't need the second two values in the array keys function. If you do, you can look them up on php.net. I've never really used them, but they are there for you. So you have also sort, which lets you sort an array, and you pass it. It returns a boolean, and you pass it an array by reference, as well as what type of sort you're going to do. There are additional sort flags you can use from php.net, though I will say that if you basically want to alphabetize or put in numerical order kind of thing, the array, you can pretty much just use sort the way it is. For those of you who don't know, I've talked about by reference a couple of times here. What you're passing in is a pointer to the actual array. So the changes that that function makes to the array are actually made to the array. I don't talk about variable scoping because I assume that as some level of programming background, you know what variable scoping is. So you can actually, I wanted to say that you can actually create functions that take variables by reference if you're making your own functions. And we will talk about functions in a later unit. You also have the array underscore values function, which returns all the values in an array. So again, you have array underscore keys to get all the keys, and array underscore values to get the values. Now you have, I want to talk about system variable arrays. You have variables that begin with dollar underscore, which we talked about. You have some very specific super globals and that kind of thing, where you have dollar underscore get, dollar underscore post, dollar underscore request, dollar underscore server. Okay, dollar underscore get stores form elements with method equal get. We'll talk about form elements in a later lesson. Okay, but I just want you to understand that if you've seen HTML forms, and you're posting or getting setting, in the form tag method equal get or method equal post, that's what your dollar underscore get and dollar underscore post arrays, super global arrays store. Dollar underscore request actually stores elements from both get and post. Okay, I tend to use dollar underscore request although there may be reasons why you want to force $_post, mainly security. Okay, so $_server stores special variables such as remote ADDR, which is the IP address of the person visiting your page, and PHP_self, which is the PHP script, and it's in the form of the, like it has the / script name, so it doesn't have the domain portion. So what we'll do is we'll typically, I'll just whet your appetite here. We typically will post, if we're posting to the same script, we'll post to PHP self, so that if the script name changes, the actual form will still work. Okay, so array printing and looping. I actually just showed you this. To print the elements in an array, to check what's in the array, put a pre-tag before and after the PHP tags, and use your print_r with the array as the option being passed. Okay, we'll talk about looping through the elements in the unit on control structures. And here's how we talk about dynamic variables, which I also briefly touched on. Dynamic variables are variables that are named as a variable. So, an example, if you have a variable of someone's first name where the value is their last, example, Mickey Mouse, $Mickey equals mouse, $Donald equals duck. These are not dynamic variables, though. Take this, for example. $name equals Mickey. Then you're going to echo $brace, $name, close brace, semicolon. That would echo mouse because variable $Mickey is equal to mouse. Same thing, $name equals Donald. If you're echoing $open brace, $name, close brace, semicolon, that would echo duck because variable Donald is equal to duck. Variable name, the name variable, $name, gets resolved first, and then the outside variable works. I never tested if you can have multiple layers of dynamic variables. That might be something someone can test and report back on the forum. Curious myself, I might try it later. Anyway, all right, more about dynamic variables. So this is just an example, as are all the examples I put in the course, and there's probably a better way to do that from a data structure. In fact, I know there is. Okay, there are better ways to do something like a first name, last name correlation. One of the things you got to be careful when doing something like that is, what if you have a name with an apostrophe? Well, as you remember, variable names cannot contain special characters. So if you have the apostrophe in your variable name, which you would potentially in a dynamic variable situation, you got to be careful with that, okay? So you got to sanitize. So here, sanitizing is very important because the variable is based on input. The user could access any system or application variable. Potentially, okay, obviously, it's all potentially, but that is the concern, and we'll get to sanitizing later. Here is the section on operators. You have the assignment operator, which is an equal sign. You have comparison operators, double equals and triple equals. You have also not equals and not double equals. Okay, those are the triple equals, and the not double equals are typically type checking. We'll talk about that in just a second. You also have less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Okay. Comparisons with strings and numbers require the string to be converted to a number except for type comparisons. Okay, so if you are comparing a string to a number, the string gets converted to a number. If you're using the triple equals or the not double equals, you are doing type comparisons. For more information on doing type comparison, there's the URL on the php.net site that you can look up. I typically don't, hardly, if ever, use type comparisons in my code. Putting it out there because I want to give you a complete listing of the operators. You also have the ternary operator, and a lot of people who code in other languages aren't familiar with ternary operators. C++ has one. That's all I can think of right now. I think off the top of my head, I can't remember if Perl does or not. But basically, they're hardly ever used, and there's only one in PHP. The ternary operator is that you're putting something before, in the middle, and after of what breaks up the ternary operator. It is a statement. It's not evaluative variable. Okay, so here's what php.net has to say. The expression1, question mark, expression2, colon, expression3, evaluates to expression2 if expression1 evaluates to true, and evaluates to expression 3 if expression 1 evaluates to false. Since PHP 5.3, it is possible to leave out the middle part of the ternary operator. Expression 1 question mark equal expression 3 returns expression 1 if expression 1 evaluates to true and expression 3 otherwise. So it's a funny way of doing an if-else. I'd rather, for readability of code, just do an if-else. Alright, so here is an example use of a ternary operator, though. Okay? This is basically saying, okay, the action equals if, this is the way you read it, if post action, so if the action element of post, meaning what got posted in the form in this particular case, is empty is another function, then set action equal to default, else action equals post action. So if it's not empty, set it there. I would have just done an if else, if then else. Name equals, okay, do the middle first. Okay. If, given equals Mickey, then name equals mouse, else name equals Donald. Okay, remember an expression you are evaluating. So for the demo, we're going to define your name as a constant and say hello name, where name obviously is the constant that you're, so it should say hello in your name. Setting names in an array and saying hello to each name using literal indexes. I might just do maybe 3. We'll get to looping through the array later. Doubles versus single quotes. I'm personally not going to demo it. I wanted to put it in here to talk about it in the demo because I think it's important for the exercise portion. I want you to take the demo portion and experiment with the double versus single quotes. We can also experiment with oh, you know what? Hold on a second. If we go to the exercise says okay, yeah, just echo hello and your name and use whatever methods appeal to you. So maybe what I will do is talk about double versus single quotes in the demo. I made these slides, and then as I'm going through it, I'm trying to make sure that they are in agreement with what I want to cover. Okay, so defining your name as a constant and saying hello name. Let's do that. So I'm going to define, oops, I can just define. And what's nice about dev PHP is it gives you the syntax. And of course the things in brackets are optional. Define name onlinephpclass.com. Okay, echo name. Now remember, if you're using constants, you don't use the $sign, but it is case sensitive. Okay, so that covers that. Setting names in an array and saying hello to each name using literal indexes. Okay, so names equal array. And actually, you don't need to, if you're going to use numerical indexes, you don't need to put the numbers. So I can say Tom, John, Greg, Sam, oops, I forgot a comma, Charlie, Cindy. Okay. And then echo break, and we want to echo them using literal indexes. And I'm actually going to put a break at the end, concatenate a break, so that all I need to do, the array starts at 0 if you haven't figured it out. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What do I have? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Okay. 6 elements. 2, 3, 4, 5. Save. Okay. Here goes the names. Oh, I was supposed to say hello to them. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't even say hello to me. Hello name. reality, I should have the apostrophe as well. So I can actually put that here. Oops. Okay. Alright, double versus single quotes, and the ternary operator with name checking. With name checking. I don't know what I meant by that. Let's see here. Double versus single quotes. Okay. So if I took, say, hello 5, a hello for 5, and I put this inside the quotes. Okay. I get it. It works. If I put the single quote, though, I get a literal. Okay. If I, here's where I was going to test the double versus single. I'll test it right here. If I put single quotes inside, what do you think it's going to do? Based on the fact that the color didn't change, it'll actually resolve the variable. But it puts the single quotes. Okay. If I wanted a double quote in there, I'd actually have to escape it. If I put double quotes here and single quotes at the end, what do you think it's going to do? Literal string with double quotes. Okay. Ternary operator with name checking. How about I do this? I think I know what I meant. Yeah. Name check equals if name equals onlinephpclass.com. Remember, double equals is comparison, single equals is assignment, and you're using your parentheses so that it knows that you're not assigning the name, you're assigning to the result of the next expression. Alright, so if name equals onlinephpclass.com, echo, then echo yes, else echo no. Or not echo, sorry. This is setting the variable. Echo name check. Okay. So yes, if I change onlinephpclass.com to www.onlinephpclass.com, I get no. Okay. That's how you can do it. And that covers that. So the exercise is to do hello name. Use whatever method appeals to you. In this particular exercise, in this particular demo, I did more in the demo than is in the exercise. As we go through the course, that may change where there's more in the exercise. And okay, so use whatever method appeals to you and practice what's in the lesson. Feel free to post your questions, observations, things you've learned, things you'd like to share in the forum, and we'll go from there. With that, thank you for listening and watching, and I'll see you in the next unit.